He was the golden boy of Hollywood, a two-time Oscar winner, a blockbuster star, and the man who once had the world at his feet. Ben Affleck, with his square jaw, undeniable talent, and boy-next-door charm, was supposed to be unstoppable. But behind the flashing cameras, red carpets, and million-dollar smiles, there was a pain he never fully escaped. And now, at 53, those close to him say the cracks have become impossible to ignore. Because this isn't just about career slumps or fading fame. It's about loss, addiction, heartbreak, and a lifelong search for peace that's always felt just out of reach. For decades, Affleck tried to play the role the world gave him. Action hero, romantic lead, comeback king. But off-screen, he was a man quietly drowning. Behind every viral meme and strained interview was a soul worn down by failed relationships, broken promises, and battles with demons that never stayed buried for long. And though he smiled through it all, the truth is now breaking through the surface. So what really happened to Ben Affleck? How did one of Hollywood's most promising stars end up haunted by regret, despite all the success? And why do those who love him say this is the chapter he may not recover from? You've seen the headlines. You've seen the photos. But the real story of Ben Affleck's downfall is darker, deeper, and more heartbreaking than you ever imagined. Long before the world knew his name, Ben Affleck was just a boy growing up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a child shaped by brilliance, instability, and a family history laced with pain. His father, once a stage actor and Harvard-educated thinker, battled crippling alcoholism, working odd jobs as the family fractured around him. Ben watched it all. His father's slow descent, his parents' divorce, and the quiet implosions that followed. The pain was quiet but constant, and it carved itself into the young boy who would one day become a movie star. By the time he was a teenager, Ben had already decided two things: that he wanted to act and that he wouldn't become his father. But as the years went on, that second promise proved harder to keep. With his childhood friend Matt Damon, Ben soared to fame after co-writing and starring in Good Will Hunting, a film that earned them an Oscar and overnight stardom. It should have been the start of a golden chapter, but for Ben, the spotlight came with a weight he never expected. Suddenly, the kid who never felt quite enough was being judged by the world. Every mistake, every bad headline, every drunken night, it was all front-page news. And though he smiled for the cameras, the old pain never left. Ben's early fame didn't come with peace. It came with pressure. He bounced between roles that felt hollow, relationships that spiraled into chaos, and a growing reliance on alcohol that he swore he had under control. But those who knew him saw something else, a man already unraveling. Behind the blockbuster roles and tabloid romances, Ben was struggling to quiet the voice in his head that told him he didn't deserve the success. That it would all be taken away, and time after time he proved that voice right. By the early 2000s, Ben had become a magnet for headlines, some scandalous, some sympathetic, all of them exhausting. His romance with Jennifer Lopez became a media circus. His performance in Giggly was mocked mercilessly, and when the pressure became too much, he turned inward, to alcohol, to isolation, to a version of himself even he barely recognized. By 2001, he had already checked into rehab once, but the battle had only just begun. What the public never saw was the man behind closed doors, the man who felt like he was constantly disappointing everyone, including himself. The man who couldn't look in the mirror without seeing the echoes of a father he promised not to become. Ben once said in an interview, "The biggest regret of my life is this divorce," speaking of his split from Jennifer Garner, the woman who tried desperately to help him stay afloat. But long before the divorce, before the paparazzi, before the critical flops, there was a little boy who wanted stability, love, and control over a life that always felt like it was spinning. And that little boy never really left him. Ben Affleck grew up fast, but he never stopped hurting. And the fame only made it harder to hide. As he entered his 40s, the world thought maybe, just maybe, he had turned a corner. Oscar wins, directorial success, a second chance. But beneath it all, the same haunted look lingered in his eyes, the look of a man still carrying the weight of his past, still trying to prove he's worthy of forgiveness, and still hoping, somehow, for peace. As Ben Affleck's fame skyrocketed, so did the chaos that followed him. Every step forward was met with another personal collapse, and at the center of it all was a man still haunted by the boy who watched his father drink away his soul. No matter how hard Ben tried to outrun it, with movies, with success, with charm, the pain always caught up. His highly publicized romance with Jennifer Lopez became one of the earliest examples of modern celebrity obsession. Bennifer was everywhere, on red carpets, on billboards, on gossip columns, and for a while it looked like Affleck had found something steady. But the pressure of constant media attention, combined with Ben's deep-rooted discomfort in the spotlight, became unbearable. He didn't just lose Lopez in the tabloid explosion, he lost part of himself. He retreated into old habits, into darker places, and when the fairy tale fell apart, the headlines mocked him mercilessly, branding him as washed up, unstable, broken. But then came Jennifer Garner, a woman who brought calm, family, and the kind of love Ben had never truly known. They married, had 3 children, and for a moment, it looked like the redemption arc had finally arrived. But behind closed doors, the storm never stopped. The cracks in the marriage were real, and Affleck's battle with alcoholism, something he had carried for decades, intensified. Garner tried everything: interventions, counseling, support. But addiction doesn't play fair, and Affleck knew it. "I drank relatively normally for a long time," he later admitted, "but when I hit a low, I couldn't stop." The spiral was brutal. Public relapses, rehab stints, paparazzi photos of a man who once held Oscars now looking disheveled, lost, barely hanging on. And through it all, he watched his family fall apart, not because he didn't love them, but because he didn't love himself enough to stop. Their divorce in 2018 shattered him. Not in a dramatic Hollywood way, but in the quiet, empty way that only those who have truly hit bottom can understand. Ben once said, "The biggest regret of my life is this divorce," and you could hear the truth in every syllable. It wasn't just about losing his wife, it was about failing his children, failing his promise to be better than the man who raised him. He looked in the mirror and saw a familiar stranger, the man he swore he'd never become. And that's when it nearly ended. Friends close to him said there were nights when they were terrified for his life. Nights when the drinking got so bad that he disappeared. Nights when no one could reach him. And the worst part? Ben didn't fight it. He let the darkness in, because at some level, he believed he deserved it. But rock bottom, as cruel as it is, has a way of exposing what truly matters. And for Ben Affleck, it was his children. The one thing in his life he hadn't yet destroyed. Their presence became his lifeline, and slowly, painfully, he began to climb out again. But the tragedy was clear. He had all the love in the world, and still couldn't save himself. Fame gave him everything. Pain took it all away. And at 53, Ben Affleck isn't just recovering. He's rebuilding from the ashes of everything he almost lost forever. By the time the internet turned Ben Affleck into a punchline, something inside him had already fractured beyond repair. The sad Affleck meme, born from a quiet, empty stare during a press interview, became viral shorthand for depression, burnout, and a life unraveling in slow motion. But while the internet laughed, Ben was bleeding internally. They didn't see the years of silent battles. The rehab check-ins, the family therapy sessions, the aching loneliness of waking up every morning with everything money could buy and nothing peace could offer. They saw a photo, a cigarette, a frown, and they made it a joke. But for Ben, that image wasn't funny. It was exactly how he felt. Because despite the red carpets and comeback attempts, he was still that man. The one haunted by past failures. The one who never felt good enough. The one trying to put 1,000 shattered pieces back together while the world watched and mocked him every time he dropped one. Even his career comeback, critically acclaimed, deeply personal and hard-earned, felt bittersweet. Films like Argo and The Way Back showed the world what Ben Affleck was truly capable of. Gritty, authentic, soul-bearing performances rooted in pain that was all too real. But with every step forward, the pressure mounted again. Interviews about sobriety, vulnerability, and redemption often twisted into sound bites and headlines. No matter how honest he was, no matter how raw, the world still wanted him to be a symbol instead of a man. His reunion with Jennifer Lopez in 2021 created a media frenzy once more, an echo of the chaos from 2 decades earlier. Photos of Ben looking tired, checked out, or miserable at public events became viral again. People speculated. Tabloids whispered. But few stopped to ask, what if he's just exhausted? What if fame was never the dream, but the prison? Ben later confessed that for years he drank not just to escape the past, but to escape the performance of being Ben Affleck itself. The Hollywood version, the flawless celebrity, the leading man who was never supposed to crack. It's not just about addiction, he said. It's about shame. It's about feeling broken and trying to pretend you're fine, and that shame ran deep. It wasn't just about the bad headlines. It was about the people he'd hurt, the years he'd lost, the children he swore to protect from the very demons that once destroyed his father. And while he smiled on red carpets, played Batman, and returned to A-list status, the weight never left his shoulders. Because fame never forgets. Fame never forgives. It just demands more. And for a man already at war with himself, being Ben Affleck was often the heaviest burden of all. So when the internet points and laughs, when memes go viral and late-night jokes get cheap applause, remember this: there's a man behind that photo. A father, a survivor, a deeply flawed human being who's trying, still, to get it right. Ben Affleck is not just a sad stare and a cigarette. He's a soul still clawing toward peace, one day at a time. At 53, Ben Affleck is still standing, but not in triumph, not with the fanfare that used to follow his every move. He's standing in something far more fragile and far more honest: acceptance of his flaws, of his failures, of the fact that redemption doesn't come wrapped in a movie deal or a golden statue. It comes quietly, in therapy sessions, in apologies, in showing up for his kids when no one's watching. He's talked openly now about shame, about relapse, about the deep corrosive guilt that sits inside an addict long after the last drink is poured. "I've done things I'm not proud of," he once said, "but I have to believe I'm not who I was on my worst day." It's a line that sums up the fragile truth he's living with now. Because for Affleck, the tragedy isn't that he fell. It's that for years he didn't believe he deserved to get back up. Even now, there's a sadness that lingers beneath the surface. You can see it in his interviews, in how carefully he chooses his words, in the way his eyes often drop when the subject turns personal. He's rebuilding, yes, but you get the sense that some pieces may never quite fit the same way again. And yet there's a strange kind of peace in how Ben carries himself today. No longer trying to convince the world of anything, he seems to be focusing inward, on his kids, on staying sober, on doing work that actually means something. Gone is the wide-eyed young actor chasing approval. In his place stands a man who has finally accepted that he may always be misunderstood, misrepresented, and misjudged. And maybe that's okay. Because what matters now is not the fame, not the roles, not the applause, but the relationships he still has a chance to protect. His children, Violet, Serafina, and Samuel, are the core of that. He has said repeatedly that being a father is his greatest responsibility, his deepest regret, and his only non-negotiable hope for a better future. He knows they've seen too much. He knows the headlines, the photos, the moments of collapse are burned into public memory. But he also knows that every sober day is a small redemption. Every moment of presence is a silent apology. And every choice he makes now isn't just for him, it's for them. There's also his second chance at love. His rekindled relationship with Jennifer Lopez has drawn its fair share of headlines, both cynical and celebratory. But Affleck insists this time is different. Older now, bruised but awake, he's not chasing a fairy tale. He's fighting for stability. For something real, for something lasting. And while the world still mocks, still speculates, still zooms in on every tired glance and furrowed brow, Ben no longer explains himself. Because he knows what the world will never fully understand. That he's still here, still trying, still healing. Not perfectly, not always successfully, but with more honesty than he's ever had before. The tragedy of Ben Affleck isn't that he lost everything. It's that for years, he didn't think he deserved to have it in the first place. But maybe, just maybe, tragedy isn't the final chapter. Maybe, at 53, what we're seeing isn't the fall, but the fight to finally rise, not for the cameras, not for the career, but for his soul.